Good.
Okay, we're good.
This is good.
All right.
Bets. We are a mess without you, sir.
Help!
Help! I need somebody. Help!
All right. Ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, record. Oh, I remembered that I meant that I was going to do the Ballers intro before the intro. That's what messed me up. All right. Delete.
Oh my gosh, you're killing me. All right. You good? We good,
Yeah.
you?
3, 2, 1, record. Hey, Red Shirts listeners, it is Matt Okada on the mic. And listen, redraft season is here. You need a draft kit, and the best one on the market, without question, is the Fantasy Footballer's Ultimate Draft Kit. It has got everything you need, from rankings and your standard projections to all the fancy sauce with Matt Harmon's reception perception. Plus, some guy named Matthew Betts has some injury stuff in there that's pretty cool. So go check that out. redshirtsudk.com and use code redshirts and you'll get 10% off, which means you get a great draft kit, you get a discount, and you help us. Check it out.
Welcome to the Red Shirts Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts,
John Helmkamp,
Matthew Betts, and Matt Okada.
Oh boy, when the cat is away, the mice shall play.
Yes, sir.
Welcome into the Red Shirts Dynasty podcast with Jon Helmkamp and Matt Okada, because this is how we do.
This is it.
We don't need Matthew Betts and his silly getting married self. No, just kidding. We love you, Betts. We miss you. We have no idea what we're doing. This podcast is going to be off the rails from the start.
It's going to be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it.
And we hope you have a successful wedding and that no one crashes it or anything crazy blows up or catches on fire.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're not there, so the shenanigans will probably be at a minimum.
True.
If we were, one can only dream of what that would look like. But in all seriousness, we love you, Betts. We're so happy for you. Happy nuptials, sir. Enjoy your time. Please don't think about football over the next week or two. Enjoy this season of life, and we look forward to your presence when you reemerge a married man.
I will eat my shoe the day that Betts goes a whole week without thinking about football, but
I know it's wishful thinking.
Yeah, give it your best shot, Betts. Well, John, how are you doing on this lovely, what is for us a Thursday evening, an unusual recording time for us, by the way, but Thursday, almost the end of the week. Listeners, it's Friday for you, so congrats on making it.
Yeah, hanging in, just surviving the dog days of summer in Arizona. We're over 110 every single day for the foreseeable future on my 10-day forecast. So, yeah, it's rough times. We're breaking a record. There's been, I want to say it's 16 straight days. That's my upstairs neighbor. I don't know what he's doing, apartment living. But anyways, we're at, I think, 16 straight days where the overnight low has been over 90 degrees.
Oh,
the overnight low. If we're supposed to hit that again tonight into tomorrow morning. If that happens, it is the record. It's tracking for one of the hottest summers in Phoenix history. And of course, it's a summer that I'm here for it. So not super thrilled, Okada. Not loving it. It's not great. Not great, Bob.
Not loving it.
Not loving it.
Is just Arizona's motto. All right. Well, it's not that hot here, so I'm surviving, but I feel your pain. Listen, we're going to get into some news, which there actually is quite a bit of. There's probably going to be a lot of news almost every episode from now for the next month because of all the craziness.
Stuff's really ramping up.
The slow season is over, everybody. But before we get into that news, just a reminder, check us out on the social media at RedShirtsFFPod, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Also, check out the website, ballblastfootball.com. As you guys know, we are now a Ball Blast Football production, and the site is popping right now. Tons of good articles going up. A series for our Patreon users, which we will get into a little bit later. Some fanciness about Patreon, but about taking advantage of ADP on whatever website you use. So lots of good content. Check that out. But let's get into some news.
I got great news, guys.
Oh, hey, news. Yes. News.
All right. I'm not going to come out of the gate with the hot lead, John. Let's save that because...
Bury the lead, huh?
Yes. Okay. Bury the lead. It's the first thing I learned in journalism school when I got my bachelor's.
Every time.
But here's the thing. The player that is the lead is connected to our show today because we're doing the AFC West division breakdown. So let's start somewhere else. Let's start out in the NFC where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just the most annoying backfield now in the entire NFL, possibly.
Easily.
Went out and signed LaShawn McCoy. Veteran running back, was on the Chiefs last year, kind of. Yeah. But he now joins...
quotes.
Yeah, he now joins Ronald Jones and Keyshawn Vaughn in the Tampa Bay backfield. He said he was very excited to join Tom Brady and Gronk. Listen, that offense has a lot of pieces that have at some point been great. A lot of them are much older. Clearly, they're gearing up for a Super Bowl run here. What is your thoughts on McCoy, the fallout for the backfield, and maybe the Bucs as a whole? Does it mean much for them?
Yeah, I think this entire offense in 2016 would have been absolutely fantastic. Even Chris Godwin in college probably would have been able to slot in.
True.
But, I mean, Gronk, we have no idea what he's going to look like on the field. Last time we saw him, he was slow and lumbering and lots of back injuries and all kinds of issues. He looks good, like he's in shape, quote unquote, but he's not football shape. He hasn't been playing football. So we're going to have to see what that looks like. Shady is not what he used to be. And, you know, age catches up to everybody, especially running backs. So, you know, he's not prime Shady McCoy. They didn't even dress him for the Super Bowl, which is not good.
Or the AFC Championship game.
True. So I don't really know what all he has left in the tank at this point. It might just be a veteran depth add. But the fact of the matter is that I'm not sure if Bellatrix was ever a thing or if it's just any backfield that's associated with Tom Brady. Because now we have another Tom Brady backfield.
True.
And I'm just going, you know what? I'm out. Like, I've been trying. I've been thinking it through. Do I want Keyshawn Vaughn, who I liked coming out of college? Do I want Ronald Jones because it's his second year in the playbook? Dyer could be very valuable in the passing game. Now you bring in Shady McCoy, who's also a very good pass-catching back. I have no idea what the workload split's going to look like. It's incredibly difficult to project at this point. Shady might see the field for, 4 to 6 touches a game. It could happen.
Yeah.
Dyer could also get 4 to 6 touches a game. Keyshawn Vaughn could get 6 to 8, and Ronald Jones could get 8 to 12. I don't know. I have no idea how it's going to split. I'm just out at this point. There's just other options elsewhere where I feel like I have a clearer picture of what their role is going to be, and I'll invest in those pieces. But I'm just kind of like, I don't want it.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what this does to draft prices within the next month when redraft drafts really kick into full gear in August. Is the general public, where most of you guys play your leagues, if you play redraft, because this is a Dynasty podcast now, technically, but in redraft is
tell Tate and Michelle.
The name of LaShawn McCoy going to bump him up enough that he's not worth drafting and bump everyone else down enough that they are worth drafting? Maybe. And to your point, like, this is a guy who was healthy scratched out of the 2 most important games of the year, and not with like a Zeke Elliott running the backfield. It was Damian Williams, who, spoiler alert, is the subject of the next piece of news, but certainly is no pure RB1 bell cow guy. So nor do they even have like a ton of depth after that. There's a bunch of Williamses, and none of them were super impressive. And McCoy was still a healthy scratch. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I don't think he has too much left. I think I agree with you there. I don't really expect him to be too much of a threat. However, what he might be is a guy who takes snaps on third down because they know he can protect Brady. And it might hurt, Vaughn's ability to get into the starting lineup sooner or even to get meaningful snaps sooner. Yeah, it's rough all around for everybody.
That's another big thing for me right now, because right now, Keyshawn Vaughn is on the COVID list. We don't know if that's because he's tested positive or because he was exposed, but it's more time that he's missing in this already really, really weird and short offseason. He has yet to be in person with his team and coaches ever since being drafted. That's what we're looking at. He has not been face-to-face with his team, with his offensive lineman, with his O coordinator, with Brady, nothing. And he's not going to be at this point until maybe a week before the season starts or 2 weeks before the season starts, depending on how the testing goes. So he's really behind the eight ball now. You add in a veteran piece into that backfield, and I'm really worried about Keyshawn Vaughn.
Are you sending a couple offers for very small picks, late picks, for either Rojo or Vaughn?
Like
in the Dynasty League.
Sending picks to acquire?
Yeah, like a second for either of them, maybe?
I would send a second for Vaughn because I still think he's the most talented running back in that backfield. And he's got the youth on his side. So if someone's really panicking right now about this backfield, like I might send out a second for Keyshawn Vaughn, who went in the first in your rookie drafts, maybe high second round.
We've talked a lot recently about, who to buy if you're rebuilding, who to sell when you're going for the championship. I feel like getting Vaughn now in a rebuild for a reduced price is not a bad move because you don't need him to produce this year.
Right.
All right. Well, let's move on to LaShawn McCoy's, the guy who kicked LaShawn McCoy out of Kansas City, kind of, not really. Damian Williams opting out of his contract.
Yeah.
Massive news. The biggest news by far of the COVID fallout so far for fantasy, because it means that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Mr. LSU, Mr. Pass-Catching Maven, Mr. First Round, highest drafted running back, now has as clear a shot to the starting job and really maybe even a bell cow role as anybody that got drafted. Let's ask it this way. How high do you have him now for redraft? And what would you be willing to offer right now for him if you're buying, or are you selling in Dynasty?
For redraft purposes right now, he moves all the way up to running back 7 in my running back rankings.
That's exactly where I have him.
Yeah, I saw that. You and I both went 7. Betts went 8. So we're all right there. He's a mid to back end running back 1 without ever touching the field because there's no one else in that offense. He's got the draft capital. We've got all the news about the coaching staff loving him and saying that he's better already than Brian Westbrook, that Patrick Mahomes handpicked him during the draft. He went in the first round. Production, pass catching ability, like he checks all the boxes that you want. He goes to the highest powered offense in the entire NFL. He's going to have so many scoring opportunities in that offense. I don't need him to carry the ball 250, 275 times either. Even if he only carries it 200 to 215, but that receiving ability, if he gets 60, 70, maybe 80, I mean, like that's way out there. But if he's a high volume producing receiving back as well, plus the touchdown ability, like he fits the mold of an Alvin Kamara in terms of what that workload split could kind of look like. You don't need him to carry the ball 22 times a game. Give him 14 carries a game and 6 receptions and let him go to work in space when Tyreek Hill is taking 3 defenders 40 yards down the field. It's juicy. I mean, it's ridiculous. So in redraft, yeah, lock him in. Take him in the first round. Don't blink. Don't look back. I love it. In Dynasty right now, he's worth at least 2 firsts. Minimum.
I was going to say, yep.
He's worth at least 2 firsts.
Yeah, and let me just say this for the Dynasty community. I think there was a lot of pushback to the reaction on CEH that said, if this moved CEH in your Dynasty rankings even a hair, that's just silly. You need to
You're doing it wrong.
No. The number one year you are playing for in Dynasty is this year. Every year after that has less value than this year. And the value increase for CEH with this move is massive this year. Plus, by the way, the sooner he starts producing and dominates, the higher his price goes quicker, the more you can trust him early on. It really matters how quickly a running back comes out of the gate. So, yeah, I think it's 2 first for sure. I'm on the fence here about whether or not he should jump Jonathan Taylor as the number 1 Dynasty running back in this rookie class. Now, most rookie drafts are over, so it doesn't really matter that much. It's more just for philosophy. And I know you won't agree, but the opportunity certainly is incredible. We know the talent is good. I would say it's not quite on the level of Jonathan Taylor's. Certainly they're different to a somewhat significant degree, but it's big. It's impactful. If you have CEH, if you drafted him already, good on you. You've benefited quite a bit from this COVID situation, at least in fantasy football. Also, really quick, Nate Solder, left tackle for the Giants, has also opted out. Keep in mind, listeners, that these kind of opt-outs can be just as important because, if you have a former Pro Bowl left tackle who now is completely gone, they have to just find another replacement. That's going to hurt Daniel Jones quite a bit. That could hurt Saquon Barkley. Does it move Daniel Jones in your rankings at all, or are you just a little bit less gung-ho about what he can do this season?
I don't know that it's enough for me to actually make a move in my rankings, but it is something to pay attention to, right? Like early on in the season, watching how this offensive line is going to operate, what's it going to look like without Nate Solder there. It's not enough for me to actually make a tangible move in my rankings and move Daniel Jones down, but it is something that makes you go, oh, okay, I'm going to have to look for that. This is a quarterback that fumbled like every third snap last year, and all of a sudden he's missing an offensive lineman. So, it is definitely concerning. It's something to watch and how this is going to look. Now, granted, Nate Solder doesn't quite look like what he used to in New England, and that's probably because New England gets the most out of every player that they have on their roster. And whenever they go somewhere else, generally it's a downgrade, other than Chandler Jones, who's balling out in Arizona. But yeah, so it's going to be something to watch for sure and see how that impacts ball security, pressure. Is he getting happy feet back there in the pocket? What's all that going to look like? It is definitely something to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, they paid a lot of money for Nate Solder, so certainly they thought he was worth, having there. All right. Well, that wraps up the news, the quite hefty news. Let's get into breaking down the AFC West because, first of all, CEH is in the AFC West, so that's exciting and timely. Second of all, this division is interesting. Now, of course, there's a clear front runner in it. The Chiefs are going to win it. Yeah. Probably every year for the next several years, maybe until Mahomes' contract is over. But let's not hate on the other teams here. In fact, we'll start with them and save the Chiefs because I'm just feeling like burying the lead today. So let's start with the team in the newest football city in the entire nation, the Las Vegas Raiders, not Oakland, but the Las Vegas Raiders. Okay, it kind of feels like this is a 2-player fantasy team. You got Josh Jacobs, you got Darren Waller, and then everything else is kind of a crapshoot. Having said that, maybe someone has to step up in the receiving core. I would think, yay or nay, starting with the receivers because there's a lot of interesting names there. Obviously, Henry Ruggs, just drafted in the first round. They also have Tyrell Williams, who's had some fantasy seasons before. I don't expect him to become anything great, but he's there. Hunter Renfrow, a potential up-and-coming talent. Certainly doesn't have the upside, I would say, that Henry Ruggs does, but maybe a little bit safer option. Also, Brian Edwards, another rookie drafted. So a lot of names, but not a lot of clarity. What do you make of this conglomeration here? Yeah,
the wide receiver position is interesting, and I think kind of being, by and large, undervalued. I've been saying kind of all off season. I love Hunter Renfrow. I think that he's great. All he does is catch passes. He's got great hands, wins contested catches, great out of the slot. Was the go-to target basically when you needed a first down for Deshaun Watson at Clemson. Did the same thing this last year, had a few more opportunities where he started to kind of step up into that offense. I expect him to take a step forward, and I expect him to probably be the primary possession wide receiver. I think that he's the one that's going to be moving the chains. He's going to operate out of the slot a lot. You have Henry Ruggs on the outside now to kind of take the top off the defense. And pre-NFL draft, what we talked about with Henry Ruggs, he's going to be way better for actual NFL football than fantasy, most likely. And we'll see. We'll see what kind of player he develops into and the workload that they give him. If he does actually command a really good target share, then Henry Ruggs could be a really good value. He could be someone that has a potential skill set similar to a Tyreek Hill, where you just want to get him the ball in space because of his raw athleticism and let him take over from there. So Hunter Renfrow is definitely the one I think that I'm most confident in that receiving corps.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Certainly, Ruggs has the upside. Renfrow probably has the reliability a little bit more. For this year, I've got a no ceiling and tons of floors on these guys. The highest target count I have for any of the receivers is 80. That's Ruggs, and Renfrow is right behind him with 76. No one over 700 yards for me this year. I think this is a wait and see year. So if you have any of these guys, I think you're waiting. Maybe if Renfrow is out there and the guy's not too pleased with him, you could go buy him. But I feel like most people who have Renfrow are going to sit on him, just like we just said to do. So I think it's kind of a figure out what's going to happen. All right, moving on from the receivers that aren't that interesting, let's talk about the running backs. I will say,
before we jump on to Josh Jacobs there, I will say that Bryan Edwards is very interesting. He's someone that you can get late in rookie drafts. He's a big body. He's the biggest receiver that they have in that receiving core. He has a potential skill set in terms of jump ball, contested catches, red zone ability. He adjusts to the ball really well in the air. There's a lot of highlights of that. You saw him do it a ton in college. He is someone that I'm interested in, but again, this is a long play. It's like if I'm going to roster him on my Dynasty team, he's probably going to be chilling for 2 to 3 years. Yeah. Not this year, but he is kind of someone to keep an eye on for developmental reasons.
Sure. I don't hate it at all. Okay, running backs. Josh Jacobs. That's pretty much it. You got Jalen Richard there.
Throw him the damn ball. That's all that there is about that.
So let's talk about that, actually, because Josh Jacobs is a guy we saw in college can catch the football. He has the talent to do it. They did not really give him a chance last year. Let's say he gets 70 targets this year.
Oh.
How high is his ceiling?
If he gets 70 targets, his ceiling is higher than Miles Sanders.
Ooh. Interesting.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Josh Jacobs, to me, is a way better runner than Miles Sanders is.
I think that's probably fair.
He's a very good pure runner. Very, very good. That offensive line is really talented. It's very underrated. People don't talk about it enough. But they open up some lanes for him. I think they're going to feed him on the ground. He's a bell cow from a carry perspective running back. If he gets 70 targets and converts that into 45 receptions on the season, 45 receptions, an extra 300 scrimmage yards, throw him a couple extra touchdowns in there as well. He has like mid-range RB1 upside easily. Yeah.
I was going to say right around there as well. I think Jacobs is a guy who can get. I don't know if he can quite hit the elite tier. He's not necessarily on what we see right now as a great offense. I don't see him having a Christian McCaffrey or even Alvin Kamara type target upside, even though he does have the pass catching chops. But just from what we saw in his rookie year, I can't really imagine that blowing up to 100 targets, or even 90. But you know, could he be Derrick Henry? Albeit not the size of Derrick Henry, but
no one's the size of Derrick Henry.
No, compete for a rushing title even at some point. Certainly, yes. Maybe be a better pass catcher than Henry, very possibly. Maybe even like a Nick Chubb type ceiling.
Chubb's a really good comparison for me with Josh Jacobs if they get him the ball in the passing game. He runs about as well as Nick Chubb does, and Nick Chubb is widely considered to be one of the best pure runners in the NFL. So Josh Jacobs to me is there. They just got to throw him the ball.
Well, speaking of throwing the ball, the one guy who we do know they're going to throw the ball to is Darren Waller.
Yes.
Well, At least we assume that based off what we saw last year, because he absolutely exploded after dealing with a lot of stuff early on in his career. Huge season for Waller. Dominated the target share there in what was technically Oakland. Where do you have him among your dynasty tight ends? Is he in that top tier, or is he just outside it?
He's outside the top tier for me. I still think there's enough question marks around that offense for me to put him up there with Mark Andrews, Zach Ertz. Obviously, he's not on the George Kittle, Travis Kelce tier. They're in a league of their own. So
yeah, I don't even count that tier.
Right. No, but like below that, you have like Zach Ertz, Mark Andrews in kind of any order, depending on who you ask. He's kind of right outside there for me in terms of dynasty. He might be the 5th best tight end from a dynasty perspective. Because what he did last year was great. He's uber athletic when he gets the ball in his hands. And they learned that. So I just need this offense to do more. And I don't know if Derek Carr can support the ceiling of all the players in this offense that we're talking about, with Josh Jacobs' receiving ability, with getting Waller, that offense as a whole needs to score more touchdowns for Darren Waller to be able to be in that top tier, basically, is what it's
true.
Like.
That's pretty fair. Only scored 3 last year, which was pretty shocking considering 117 targets and 90 catches.
That's a big boy.
For over 1,100 yards. You would think those touchdowns would come up. They do need to get in the red zone for that to happen. So if this whole team gets a little better, I expect Waller can hold or even step up, maybe even into that next tier. I have him exactly where you mentioned, tight end 5, right outside that Ertz and Andrews tier. I think he's I feel like Waller's maybe his own little tier of one player that's just outside Ertz and Andrews, who I feel like are more reliable, but is ahead of the Henrys and
I don't know, like
everybody else.
Oh, I just love Henry. Like I know that you do too, but I love Henry as a talent. Like he's that tight end I've been waiting for like 3 years to be like,
true.
Can you please give me 16 games? Give me 14. Screw 16. Give me 14 games
I would take it.
of Hunter Henry, and it would look so good. So I don't know. That's tough for me. I think that technically I have Hunter Henry above him in my rankings. But I think that they're right in that same kind of neighborhood as those like fringe could really break in to the top tier kind of tight ends.
Okay.
And also I think it's something to keep in mind about this offense as a whole. They went through some really weird stuff last year because they had the whole Antonio Brown saga, who they were expecting to be their stud alpha wide receiver 1. And then that fell apart at the last second. So they had to kind of regroup and bundle all the pieces. Now they've gone out and they've gotten more pieces. They got a speedster, Henry Ruggs to stretch. They got a big guy in Bryan Edwards. So they're doing everything that they can to get the pieces in place for this offense.
It was also the first year with John Gruden.
It was.
Not just as their coach, but as a coach in a long time.
10 years.
So, yeah. So you could certainly say that there is potential upside for this team. I'm not projecting them to win 10 games or anything like that, but I think the offense could take a step forward. I don't hate that at all. If it is going to take a step forward, it's probably going to require a step forward from Derek Carr. Yeah. Because he's been just whatever since that 1 year he was
2015.
Yeah, exactly.
2015.
Was actually in the MVP conversation back then, and he got hurt. I think it was a thumb injury or something like that, a hand or an elbow.
Didn't they go 13-3?
They had a really good record. But since then, he's been a game manager at best. Yep. Interestingly, they brought in Marcus Mariota this offseason to a better contract than some backups have gotten this offseason as well.
Marcus got paid more than Jameis Winston.
Yes.
Very weird.
Is there any chance? Let's start with this. Is there any chance that Derek Carr does take that step forward, or is he locked in as a back-end QB2 you don't even really care about him that much in Superflex and has no upside?
What's tough for me is that his completion percentage was incredibly good last year, which is
because he throws behind the line of scrimmage.
Right, because they didn't ask him to do a whole lot. But I don't know. With the weapons that they have there in a second season, it's possible that he takes a step forward. I don't think he takes a giant leap forward. I think that we've seen the ceiling for Derek Carr. I've said it before on this show. He's just good enough for you not to can him. Like, they can't just move on from Derek Carr.
Perfectly fine.
He's perfectly fine because he doesn't suck enough for them to be like, okay, we're blowing it up and we're going to go out and make a move for a top-tier quarterback in the draft or something like that. I don't know. I think you've just seen what it is, and they don't have the defense to be – if you're going to have a quarterback like that, your defense better be really, really good. And they don't have the defense to support that. So it's like they're kind of in la-la land. Derek Carr's in la-la land. What's this identity going to look like going forward? You traded away Mac a couple years ago. So, like, what's your plan? I don't know. I'm still waiting to figure that out. I think they're still waiting to figure it out. We'll see what happens.
I will say this. I'm going to throw this out there. You tell me how crazy I am. I would rather have Marcus Mariota at his price than Derek Carr at his price.
Oof.
I still think there's a tiny chance that Mariota does something in the NFL. And maybe it's take Carr's job if Carr loses, starts the season 2-6. Maybe Mariota gets a chance. Or maybe it's just he plays one game at the end of the year and looks good when the season is over and he gets another job somewhere else as a starting quarterback. But you can get him for pennies on the dollar. Yeah, Carr in a Superflex, you still have to pay something for. And I don't see any upside.
Yeah, Mariota's interesting to me. I'm an Oregon guy. Heisman winner from Oregon. Looked absolutely incredible. Rushing ability was amazing. I don't know, though. We just haven't seen it. It's just been very spotty, very inconsistent in the NFL. Did a great job with ball security. I'll give him that. He had a couple of really good seasons on a ball security standpoint.
Safe.
He's safe. He's Alex Smith. And I don't know that there's a whole lot else there to the game. Unfortunately, he just didn't kind of progress into that NFL quarterback that we thought he was going to be when he came out.
Fair enough. All right, let's go over to Los Angeles since we talked about Hunter Henry, and we can just start with him. Los Angeles Chargers. Every team in this division apparently is moving, so get ready, Chiefs, because you're going to be moving next.
No, they
there's literally zero chance.
Stadium after Pat Mahomes. They're not going anywhere.
The most interesting question here is certainly the quarterback position, but let's save that. We talked about Hunter Henry in reference to Darren Waller. They're kind of right there together. I do agree with you. I have Waller one spot ahead. I think you said you have Henry one spot ahead. Honestly, it could be a coin flip either way. Right. Both of these guys, listen, Waller has had his breakout because last year was crazy productive, but I still feel like there's maybe some uncertainty. Like, was that a fluke with the additional pass-catching weapons? Will he come back down a little bit? Meanwhile, Henry has not really properly had the full breakout because he hasn't played a full season, I think, since his rookie year.
I think so.
But every time we've seen him, it's been flashes. If he puts together a whole season, if he becomes the tight end we think he could be, is there a ceiling? Because I think it's tight end one.
Yeah. I don't think that there is. If he puts it all together, he has the skill set in an offense with enough weapons. If the quarterback position can support it and he can stay healthy, he could loft himself into that, right maybe just behind George Kittle. He could reach it. He could hit that ceiling. He has tight end one overall ability in his game, depending on health and depending upon quarterback play.
I could see a realm of possibility where at this time next year, we're talking about Hunter Henry over Travis Kelce.
I think so. With Kelce being, I think he's
another year older. Yep.
Another year older in dynasty formats. If we have Hunter Henry piecing together an entire season with his youth and attached to a young quarterback, yeah, it could be a conversation to be had for sure.
As a note, we are doing a Dynasty startup right now, which I'll actually mention a little bit more at the sponsorship break. Spoiler alert. But Hunter Henry, he was the 5th tight end drafted. I don't know if you've seen this, John, but he went more than 2 full rounds after Waller at the end of the 8th.
Yeah.
So the gap that people see there, I think, is pretty big.
Yep.
And I don't necessarily see as much of a gap. And I think that he has a greater ceiling than anybody in the 8th round or later. By the way, this is a tight end premium league.
Yeah.
The price for Henry is pretty nice right now. I think he's one of those guys that you want to buy now before this season.
Yeah, I agree.
Because worst case scenario, he kind of stays at the price he's at if he has another 10-game season. Best case scenario, you get a massive deal when he is elite. So go do that. Buy yourself some Hunter Henry.
No kidding.
Okay, let's talk about the quarterbacks because that's really what it all hinges on for this team. Tyrod Taylor. Woo! Get out your exciting
Humdinger.
Yeah. Tyrod Taylor signed to supposedly maybe start the season. They have talked him up a bit so far. I think that's probably them trying to put fans in the stands, but that's not really going to happen either because coronavirus, but put fans in the stores that buy their jerseys. I don't know.
Yes, merchandising. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to try it out, I think, with Tyrod Taylor. But Justin Herbert waiting in the wings, 6th overall pick, if I'm not mistaken, which I could be.
Yep,
okay, good. Thank you. Another Oregon guy, another Oregon quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see this playing out this year? And I think we can all assume Herbert takes over by the start of next year. Where do you see him kind of maybe rising to in Dynasty?
I think that Herbert takes over by around week 6.
That is a very nice number. I
think it's going to be right around there this season where Tyrod Taylor starts the year and they go about 2-4. And Tyrod Taylor all of a sudden doesn't look like the quarterback that he was in Buffalo because guess what? It was like 5 years ago. It's been a minute. So I think that Tyrod Taylor is going to get the nod to start because he's a veteran, and this is a really weird offseason in particular. But you don't take a quarterback 6th overall and not play him. It's just not how it works anymore.
Yeah, I think that's the real key. If you look at the numbers, like we looked at Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback for the Browns. Baker Mayfield got drafted, and they said, we're going to try ourselves from Tyrod Taylor right out of the gate. And no, he lasted not even, 2 games, 1.5 games? Technically, he got hit, and Baker went in.
Yeah.
But then he just kept the job. So I'll tell you what. I just pulled up their schedule just for fun. I think it's going to be. I think week 6 is going to be the week that Herbert starts because here's their schedule. They play the Bengals. They probably pull that one off. Good job, Chargers. A nice opening win on opening day. Your fans are excited. Then they face the Chiefs.
Is it home or away? Home or away for year?
Away.
So at Cincy, Joe Burrow coronation ceremony.
Yes.
In Cincinnati.
Who knows? Maybe Burrow pulls off a miracle and they even lose that one. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Sure. Then they play the Chiefs and get slammed.
That's a no.
Then they play the Panthers. I think the Panthers win that one.
I think the Panthers win that.
I think they put together a pretty good little team there. Mm-hmm. Then they play the Buccaneers.
You're losing that. Sorry.
The Buccaneers are winning. Tom Brady and what they put together over there. Yeah. The Buccaneers are winning that. And then they play the Saints in week 5 and get clobbered again. Heading into week 6 against the Jets, a nice soft matchup.
Perfect.
For Herbert to come out against.
Beautiful.
Boom. There you go.
No Jamal Adams anymore.
No.
Beautiful.
Nothing in the secondary.
That is the week. That's beautiful. Yes. I love this. That's
you heard it here first. Week 6 debut for Justin Herbert. And okay,
pen that into your calendar. Pen.
Yeah, so Herbert takes over. He's got offensive weapons, a lot of them. He was a 6th overall pick. Do you see him being a QB1 within a couple years?
I do. To me, he reminds me a little bit of Josh Allen. They're both bigger quarterbacks with cannon arms that are very mobile. I think that the people that have the concerns about his accuracy issues that he had at times discredit the potential rushing ability that he brings to the game, just like Josh Allen. He doesn't need to have a 70% completion percentage for him to be a fantasy quarterback 1. I think it's entirely possible that he is going to be one of those quarterbacks that you can bank 400 to 500 rushing yards a season out of Justin Herbert and slot him in nicely as like your quarterback 8-9, something like that in fantasy. And you have the weapons around him with Austin Eckler for dump-offs, for Keenan Allen, who just absolutely cooks every defender that tries to guard him. And, Hunter Henry that we just talked about, Mike Williams. He has arguably one of the top 5 offensive casts in the NFL, maybe from a skill position standpoint.
Yeah, I don't
it's
hate it.
all there. It's all there for him to take that step. Might be a little bit of a bumpy year 1 with it just being a weird COVID season and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that Justin Herbert is a fine quarterback for Dynasty because of the athleticism. He's a strider, man. Like, he doesn't look like he's running fast, but he's 6'6", and he just eats up yardage whenever he runs. Ran in the 4. Oh, was it in the 4.5s? Was he sub 4.6?
I think it was in the 4.5s.
4.57 or something.
7 is exactly the number I was going to say.
That sounds about right. So yeah, I think that he has the athleticism, big body, like had one freak injury where he broke his collarbone in college, but other than that, very durable. He just kind of fits into that athletic, big body quarterback mold that brings a rushing floor to the game.
We were on crack. It was a 4.68.
Oh, okay. That's still not bad for a quarterback that size.
Certainly not.
That's okay.
All right. So we both like him in the future. I do think he'll be a kind of maybe back end QB1 within a couple years. I don't ever see him probably being like a top 4 or 5 guy.
No, I don't think.
I
don't think he's got that in this game.
But he'll be there, like maybe in the. He's kind of got a little bit of Alex Smith with an arm written on him. Like he can be that sort of back in QB1 who has sneaky rushing ability, but also I feel like Herbert's got a better arm, so maybe he can get a little higher than Alex Smith.
Well, he's got an absolute cannon for an arm.
Yeah.
Like at his pro day, he threw 70 yards flat-footed. Like it was ridiculous. Oh, and by the way, the Chargers staff was involved with the Senior Bowl where he went to, and
MVP.
they fell in love with MVP. They fell in love with him there. Oh, and who else was in that game that they also drafted? Running back.
Someone. Oh, Josh Kelly. Yeah.
Josh Kelly and Herbert were on the field at the same time.
Yep.
In that Senior Bowl. And everyone was like, oh, Herbert's soft-spoken. He's not a leader. All the players responded to him and loved him. And he was outspoken and high-fiving and hugging after the game. And I think he did a great job for himself at the Senior Bowl. And the Chargers clearly fell in love with him and Josh Kelly both and took them both.
Yeah. Well, let's hop over to the running backs. Josh Kelly, newly drafted. I believe the 4th round, but I'm not.
Yes.
4th or 5th, maybe.
I think it was 4th.
4th. Out of UCLA, did look good in the Senior Bowl. I like him. I think we talked about him a little bit in our one of our podcasts back in the draft season. I think he actually has a good chance to be something. But for now, it is Austin Eckler, and technically it's probably Justin Jackson ahead of him as well. Right. But mainly it is Austin Eckler. After a massive season last year with Melvin Gordon holding out, now Melvin Gordon gone. They signed Austin Eckler to a bit of an extension, 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. Not too much money. I believe it was a little over $6 million per year.
Yeah, it was like 6.5. Yeah.
Well, where are you valuing Austin Eckler in Dynasty? Because he's a little bit of an anomaly in that he kind of fits somewhere in between the true RB1s that you love and are reliable with, and all the young guys who you're hoping step up. He's kind of in this middle ground that is maybe a little harder to evaluate.
He is, because he's not like a fantastic runner, but he's so freaking good in the passing game, which is why he's so valuable in PPR. He's a fine enough runner. Like, he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not great on the ground. His strength is being utilized in the passing game and in space, and he breaks a ton of huge plays, like constantly. He's always breaking a big play. So his ability really stems from that, which makes him harder to evaluate for me, because I like my running backs to actually run the ball, shockingly enough. So for me, I've been kind of thinking about this, especially since the Damian Williams news broke yesterday. And started really kind of diving back in on my running back rankings, where to put CEH, how to compare him with like Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, stuff like that. I think that Eckler, for me, kind of pushed down my board a couple. I think that he's probably like a back-end RB1 for me right now in Dynasty, because he's going to be there for a couple of years, which is great, but I don't think that he's going to get the workload on the ground. And I think that last year's usage in the passing game and the efficiency that he showed in that was a little bit of an outlier. I expect that to come down maybe a little bit from what we saw last year, where he was just absolutely torching everybody for the first like half of the season. Yeah,
he is a back-end RB1 in Dynasty for me as well, RB11 to be exact.
Right.
In kind of the somewhere between the Mixon, Aaron Jones tier and the Miles Sanders, Kenyon Drake area.
Yep.
Kind of the guys that we know can be top-end RB1s, but we're not 100% sure yet. So I think he's going to be very solid. I like him. I also like Josh Kelly. I think you guys should go buy him. Maybe after the first couple games. 4th round, thank you. After the first couple games, when Justin Jackson gets more carries than him, and people are like, this Josh Kelly guy is nothing, go out and buy him, see what he could become. I could easily see him out carrying Austin Eckler within a couple years.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
Not out touching necessarily, but out carrying.
Yeah, right.
Okay, let's close it out with receivers. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And after that, diddly squat.
Nada.
Yeah. Keenan Allen getting a little bit older. Mike Williams, it's tough with Mike Williams because he has quote unquote broken out in that he's had some seasons with a lot of touchdowns. He just had over 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
But yes, I believe so.
1,000 yards. Yep. Last year.
But we have not seen him become what he maybe was drafted to be, which was a true number one dominant player. I mean, this guy was taken 7th overall in 2017. Keenan Allen is 28. So he's still right within a nice age where he can be a good productive receiver for a few more years. I think we know what he is. He's an established back end one. He's a good PPR receiver. Probably more of a high end 2, depending on the quarterback situation this year. We'll see how that pans out. But let's talk more about Mike Williams. So last year, 1,000 yards, only 2 touchdowns. The year before that, 664 yards, 10 touchdowns.
Like,
how do you evaluate that? I have no idea.
Let's find a happy medium, can we, Mike? Like, from low yardage, massive touchdown to nice yardage, minimal touchdown makes no sense. I don't like it.
So it's hard to say, like, did he have his breakout? Because in his second year, he had a touchdown breakout, and his third year, he had a yardage breakout, but he hasn't put them together. And for a guy who was drafted 7th overall, you definitely want to see both those things together at some point. I know Betts loves Mike Williams. I also have been a big Mike Williams fan in the past. I'm a little concerned. The touchdowns last year, and listen, touchdowns are not a sticky stat. Right. It's very liable to come back up. Phillip Rivers was doo-doo throwing the ball deep last year.
Right.
I'm sure Mike Williams should have had 3 or 4 touchdowns that Phillip Rivers just bungled throwing 5 yards underneath. But I'm falling down a little bit from my position that I did have a couple years ago that I thought he could be a top-end wide receiver 1. Having said that, I do still think that if Herbert ends up being what we've talked about, which is a QB1, a back-end QB1, that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams can both be valuable, and Mike Williams can put up 1,000 plus and 6 or 7 touchdowns, and you are 100% in the wide receiver 2 range at that point, which is definitely a better position than where he's going right now or what his value is right now. So I guess the question is, what do you think are the chances that that happens for him?
I think it's there. I do. And maybe it's because I still look at him through rose-colored glasses for what he did at Clemson, because, man, he was so fun.
Yes,
he was so fun to watch.
Classic Clemson receiver.
Oh, just
dominant,
so good.
Big, lanky. Yeah, great.
Deshaun Watson throwing the ball up to him go up and get it and bring it down. Just incredible. But I do think that he has a really good skill set that just didn't match with Phillip Rivers at the back end of Phillip Rivers' career. So I think that his breakout was really kind of sputtered by Phillip Rivers' play. Mm-hmm. When Justin Herbert takes over this offense, Herbert is a good thrower. He's not as inaccurate as a Josh Allen. I think that he's a better passer than Josh Allen is. He could easily have.
That's not too hard to be, but yes.
It's really not. But if you tell me that next season, for the 2021 season, he's got a completion percentage around 63, I'd buy that.
Sure.
I think that's absolutely doable. He's not going to be like a 57 completion percentage guy. So, and he's so good on the deep ball, throws an absolute rocket. He's 6'6". He's going to like that. He's going to love taking his shots with the big body wide receiver. And I think that he's going to give him jump balls way better than Phillip Rivers did. So I think that 1,000-yard season, 6 to 8 touchdowns is very, very doable for Mike Williams. Almost said Mike Evans. So doable for him. I think that he's got that in his repertoire. Absolutely. I think it'll match up well with when Herbert takes over.
Yeah. And listen, above all else, his price right now is, I think you got to go get him. He's going, I just checked ADP, somewhere in the mid wide receiver 30s between Will Fuller and AJ Green.
No.
his floor is around where those guys could be probably, and his ceiling is still a wide receiver 1 if he truly breaks out and puts the yardage and the touchdowns together. So I think you go out and buy him. I mean, you can get him for a back end second, right? I'm not tripping there.
I think that would do it.
I would absolutely pay a back end second. I would rather have him than the receivers I'm getting in the back end of the second round right now.
Yeah.
And those are some decent receivers. So, all right. We have technically 10 minutes left until the hour mark, John, and have 2 whole teams left. Fortunately, we don't give no craps because Betts isn't here. Betts can't tell us it's bedtime on the East Coast, so
no more Grandpa.
Sorry, listener. This is going to maybe be a little bit of a long one. All right,
it might be an hour 15. We'll see what happens.
True. Let's go over to Denver, Mile High City. We will save the Chiefs for last. This team is very interesting for Dynasty. Maybe we shouldn't have saved them this long because we're probably going to want to talk about them for a while. But Drew Lock got some starts last year.
Yes.
That's kind of all I can really say about him. Okay. He showed some interesting flashes. It was mostly against terrible defenses.
You talk on him for 60 seconds.
Yeah. Can't do it. He is fine. He has the potential to be, I would say, a good QB2, but I don't necessarily see him being a QB1 anytime soon. However, they did go and get him the weaponry to try to do that. Yeah. So they already had Cortland Sutton. Also, Deshaun Hamilton, but he hasn't really panned out as they thought. I don't think that he would.
He's dead to me now.
Yeah, not great. But Cortland Sutton certainly did show out that he can be a wide receiver 1. And then they went out and got Jerry Jeudy, one of our favorite prospects, one of the top 2, no questions asked, wide receiver prospects in this draft, along with CeeDee Lamb, plus KJ Hamler, who is an interesting piece. Certainly not the technician or the polished receiver that Jerry Jeudy is, but
good slot guy.
Yes, good slot guy, a lot of potential speed and explosiveness upside. So they got him that weaponry. They have Noah Fant.
Albert
Okwuegbunam. Drew Lock's former tight end.
Yes.
Now current tight end. And they have some running backs. So there's a lot of weaponry around him. I guess let's start with Lock because of everything else being so interesting. Where do you see his ceiling being if he ends up being the quarterback that they think he is? And can he even be that?
No.
I
don't think so.
Savage.
I just don't think he has it. He's like one of the most likable kids in the world. You're like, oh man, can you marry my daughter? Like that. I like you can be a part of my family. That's okay. But he's not that. He's not the stud long-term quarterback answer that, quite frankly, John always been looking for since the day he took the job.
Yeah.
Since Peyton Manning retired, he has no idea what he's doing at quarterback. Watch, it'll be Aaron Rodgers in 2 years, guaranteed.
Ooh.
I guarantee that happens. Like
I could see it.
No question about it. In which case, Jerry Jeudy, all systems go. But I just don't see it for Drew Lock. I think that his ceiling, like if everything goes right, I think his ceiling, I can't put him in the top 12. I don't see his ceiling being in the top 12.
That's kind of rough. Having said that, I don't really disagree with you. I was not necessarily a huge fan of Drew Lock as a prospect coming out of the draft. I didn't see anything from him last year that like totally changed my mind on that. Certainly, he has a better weaponry now, at least one additional piece, although it's a rookie in Jerry Jeudy, that could elevate this team quite a bit. Also got a good running back, which could help a little bit. We'll talk about him in a second. But yeah, I think he could be a QB1, a back-end QB1, but I don't really see him as like a locked and loaded franchise quarterback for this team. I don't see him getting a mega deal like, the Carson Wentz's and Dak. Well, Dak hasn't. Dak will get these kinds of guys. Jared Goff. I don't see him really even being that kind of guy. Right. Maybe more of a Derek Carr. That's probably the mid range of what he could be. He can certainly be better than that. But yeah, I'm not excited. We clearly are not as excited about Drew Lock as a lot of the Dynasty community is because they are freaking out about all this weaponry. But listen, guys, it's adding a lot of young, potentially good weaponry to a young, we don't really know what he is quarterback. That does not a recipe for a QB1 make necessarily.
He had 5 games last year against very subpar defenses, as Betts loves to point out. We haven't seen it. Like, to say that you saw enough last year to be like, this is our guy, and we love him, and he's our franchise dude. But I'll tell you what, he doesn't have any excuses now. With the weapons that they have in that offense, if he's not producing, you're out of chances. Like, you have everything you could ask for from a skill position basis.
So, quick name game in Dynasty: Drew Lock or Gardner Minshew?
Gardner Minshew.
I agree, barely. Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater?
Teddy B.
I agree strongly. Drew Lock or Dwayne Haskins?
Interesting. Very similar stories. 5 games at the end of the season. You saw a little bit of flashes. Very unstable there. That one's tough. I think I'd go Lock.
It is tough.
I think I'd go Lock.
I think I might go Haskins.
It's so close for me.
The thing is, I believe in Haskins more as a prospect. I believe in Lock's weaponry a little bit more.
Agreed.
But I'm going to probably bet on the talent there and go Haskins, but it's kind of a toss-up. And I think that's the point, is that we think it's a toss-up, and everybody else would not even – I mean, they're talking about Drew Lock versus Baker Mayfield or something.
Baker, 10 times out of 10. No question about it.
All right. Sorry, Drew Lock. We're done with you now. Go away.
Love you. Run for you, kid.
Yeah, let's talk about those receivers that we just hit on, because it is an interesting situation here. Courtland Sutton established himself as a wide receiver 1, Dynasty wide receiver 1, fringe guy at least.
Yep.
But then they went out and drafted Jerry Jeudy. Extremely polished, very talented, very productive receiver with a lot of potential in the NFL. And also KJ Hamler, who we mentioned. Let's just talk about Sutton and Jeudy briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's a chance that Jeudy is a wide receiver 1 on this team in a couple years? Or is this Sutton 1A at least and Jeudy is a 1B?
They're different types. You know what I mean? It's tough for me because Drew Lock is the best technician we've seen since another Alabama alum, Amari Cooper.
Jerry Jeudy.
Yes, I agree. I do. But what'd I say?
You said Drew Lock.
I'm sorry.
Definitely not a technician.
Definitely not a technician. No, I mean Jerry Jeudy. But at the wide receiver position, polished, route running, his breaks, his leverage, everything about what he does at the wide receiver position is the best that's come out since Amari Cooper, which everyone was dubbing him to be an absolutely polished NFL-ready wide receiver, also coming out of Alabama. So it's really interesting to me because it kind of has the Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper feel to it in terms of the type of players that you have on this offense. I think that they could work in unison as a 1A, 1B. I don't think that Jeudy just makes Sutton go away. I don't see that happening. Sutton was actually better last year when he had Emmanuel Sanders on the opposite side before they traded him to San Francisco. So I think that this helps Sutton's upside.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I also kind of see your comparison is pretty solid. I also like comparing it to what the Broncos used to have in Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders himself.
Yeah.
Except that I think Judy's probably better than Emmanuel Sanders. Agreed. And I don't know if Sutton is really quite as good as Demaryius Thomas, who was an elite wide receiver 1. So with that being said, I do think it's going to be a 1A, 1B. I do think they're different enough that both can thrive in their own way. Sutton will probably, have more touchdowns most commonly, and Jeudy will have more catches and more targets potentially in the not so distant future. So I like both. It's not great for Jeudy because I would have liked to see him go to a place he was the 1A or the clear one, and he's the 1B here, but I don't think it's terrible. I'm still, interested in owning him, and it does maybe a lot of it rides on Drew Lock being good. So please be good, Drew Lock.
Please,
because we like these receivers.
Prove me wrong. Absolutely, prove me wrong, Drew Lock, on everything that I just said, and support all these fantasy assets. Do it.
Speaking of pass catchers, one more of I would say high interest. Noah Fant, tight end, very athletic, very explosive tight end. Definitely has high upside. We saw some pretty good stuff from him last year. Is there a chance that he is a high-end tight end 1 within a year or two, or is Fant more of like that? He's stuck in that revolving super tier of guys between tight ends 8 and 15.
No, I think that he has that in him. I do think that he has the talent. The yard after the catch ability is absolutely incredible. Super athletic. He reminds me game-wise a little bit of a George Kittle, except George Kittle's more well-rounded on like the blocking and the stuff like that. But in terms of what he does in the pass game and after the catch, things like that, I can see a breakout for Fant coming. I think that he has that in him absolutely, where a couple years down the road, he could be looked at as a dynasty top 5 tight end.
Yeah, I mean, 40 catches for 562 yards as a rookie is very solid. And that was with a mess at quarterback, a bad team, only 3 touchdowns. I think that can come up as a team gets better, just like we talked about with Darren Waller. So, I agree. I think there's a lot of upside with Noah Fant. I think he could be a top-end tight end 1 in the not-so-distant future. Certainly in the conversation with the Wallers and Henrys, even by this time next year. So
and what we've seen from elite tight ends from a fantasy perspective is that they don't always have to be tied to an elite quarterback, because we've seen it with Jimmy Garoppolo. We've seen Waller with Derek Carr. We've seen
Kelsey with Alex Smith even before
Mahomes put up over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, I think it was. So you can flourish at the tight end position without needing to have a top 5 dynasty quarterback back there slinging the rock. So I do think that Noah Fant is a safer option to emerge than maybe some of the wide receivers that are kind of fighting.
Also, Ertz with Carson Wentz, am I right? Because he's average.
No.
Heck.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree.
That guy sucks.
I'm taking, that guy sucks. Derek Carr or Carson Wentz, who do you pick?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It's really tough. It's a coin flip. I don't know.
Get wrecked.
For our listeners, we're just poking fun at bets. Please don't take any of that seriously. It's Carson Wentz. It's Carson Wentz.
Okay, quickly on the running backs. We had a Phillip Lindsay, Royce Freeman backfield that was kind of interesting for the last couple of years, because Lindsay was an undrafted out of nowhere. Suddenly he's close to an RB1. Royce Freeman was the guy who got drafted, another Oregon guy who got drafted and we kind of liked and didn't do too much, dealt with some injuries, and then they went out and signed Melvin Gordon.
Yep.
And kaputs Royce Freeman for right now, at least, probably severely hampered Phillip Lindsay. Melvin Gordon is the guy you want most in Dynasty? Yes? Yeah. Okay.
Well, they gave him a multi-year contract, too.
Yes, they did. It's not a one-year deal like Gurley. They actually invested him a little bit. Is he in your top 15 range in Dynasty?
He's right there, fringe. Okay. I'm struggling to place him because there's guys there that I keep looking at, because he is competing with Phillip Lindsay, and there's other guys that don't have the same competition. I believe in Melvin Gordon's skill set, absolutely. He's a very, very good running back, very good at catching the ball, but he does have Phillip Lindsay there as well. So it's going to be a timeshare. It's just going to be interesting to see how that shakes out to kind of solidify that long-term prognosis. But he's like around 15 to 18, somewhere in that ballpark.
We talked about it with redraft breakdown. I think Phillip Lindsay has been too good and too efficient for this team for them to just say, sorry, you don't get any more carries. I think he's getting 6 to 8 carries a game pretty easily.
I think it might even be more than that. I think that Lindsay might carve out a higher role than that and be a startable flex play. I think that he might have enough value in that offense.
I mean, we've seen it with Melvin Gordon over the last couple of years. Austin Eckler had a role, so we could see more of that here. We do like Gordon, but outside the RB1 range for Dynasty. I agree with you there. Pretty close to 15 for me also. Are you interested in buying Phillip Lindsay at all? Or is he just kind of meh?
I think that you can get Lindsay for super cheap because of the Melvin Gordon signing. I'm still interested in it. In the draft that we still need to talk about, BT Dubs. I did take Phillip Lindsay in that draft. I am still interested in what I think that he could be from a value perspective.
Well, thank you for reminding me, John.
You're welcome.
As you all may know, I am not bet, so I just completely forgot that we're supposed to do a sponsor read in the middle of the show. Here's the thing. It's okay, because we're sponsoring ourselves, so we can do whatever we want.
We are.
The Patreon
nice little pat on the
is
back today.
sponsoring today's episode because patreon.com/ballblast is absolutely insane right now. It is by far the best place to hang out with fantasy football players, talk to us, talk to other players in the same, interest, industry, everything. The chat is insane. We just started a Dynasty startup league that is in the middle of the draft right now. The chat in that sleeper league is insane.
Nuts.
Absolutely bonkers. We love everybody there. I know they're all listening. Hey, guys, we love you. Anyone who's listening who's not on the Patreon, you should get in there so you can be part of that group also. There is exclusive content. I mentioned it earlier. That whole series on taking advantage of ADP, only available on our Patreon. There is betting articles going up that is only available on the Patreon. It is a great place to hang out. There are tiers I haven't even talked about that bring in sweet stuff like merch. So check it out. Patreon.com/ballblast. There's some low-cost tiers, and if you want to get super involved, there's some high-cost tiers. So just check it out, see what you want to do. It's really fun, I promise.
$5 a month is kind of the sweet spot that kind of starts getting you in and unlocking some of those awesome tiers into the Slack channel. We're chatting. Everyone's kicking it. You also get more entries whenever we do a giveaway.
True.
Which is great. You're automatically in on any giveaway that we do by being a Patreon supporter.
The winner of our Devontae Adams jersey was a Patreon supporter. So do that. All right. Let's move on to the last team. Well, I would say let's try to be quick.
Some scrubs, right? Like
this
is just kind of a team that no one needs to pay attention to for fantasy.
Yes. This team is devoid of talent. Especially at the quarterback position. They don't really know what they're doing there. No, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. They are the clear front runners. They may go on a division dominance streak that rivals the Patriots over the last 20 years, although that's probably impossible. But they're going to do their best because they just signed Patrick Mahomes to a $503 million contract. They drafted a talented pass-catching running back in the first round who now has a clear-carved role to the number one spot. They have a bevy of pass catchers with a lot of talent and a lot of speed. And it's honestly one of the most well put together teams, at least on offense, which is all we care about for fantasy, that I can remember in recent memory. Like the Broncos of 2015, the Patriots of maybe 15 years ago. These kinds of systems where everything, the pieces are just perfectly right, and the offense is going to be absolutely unstoppable. I mean, I don't know there's not too much to talk about. Travis Kelce is a top 2 Dynasty tight end. No disagreement there?
None.
Okay. All right. Do you want to put him above Kittle?
Dynasty, no, I've got him at 2 just because of age.
Okay.
Redraft, he's my 1.
Same here. I think that's pretty much an obvious consensus. Kelce is a tight end 2. He's as good as it gets besides Kittle. And you should target him in startups. You can't really buy him probably because they're way too expensive. But
him and Kittle, you're never going to
buy. Yeah. Receivers, Tyreek Hill. He's freaking Tyreek Hill. He's very, very good. He's a wide receiver 1. He is going to be a 1,200-plus yard guy for a couple more years at least. Going to be in the 7+ touchdown range easily, especially if Mahomes kicks up that touchdown total again. No question, we love Tyreek Hill in Dynasty, correct?
Correct. He's actually my Dynasty wide receiver 2.
Woo. Let's see where I have him before I go shaming you. Ha! I have him at 2.
Do you? I love you.
Yes. Let's
Fantastic.
Go. Dynasty tight end, or Dynasty wide receiver 2 behind Michael Thomas for both of us, I assume. Okay. After that, at wide receiver, it does get a little bit more interesting. You still have Sammy Watkins there, which is interesting because we didn't know if he was going to be around. He has had some good flashes for this team, but I don't know how reliable he is. Then you've got
No. Sammy Watkins had the week 1 40-plus fantasy points.
Flash.
The 40-plus fantasy points last year in week 1. That was more than half of his total on the year.
Yeah. He also has had a couple good playoff games for them, but
the way that he torched Sherman as a Seahawks fan, I was like, thank you. Get wrecked, Sherman.
So let's just stop on Watkins for a second. Do you have any interest in owning him?
No.
Okay.
No.
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 Yeah. I don't hate that. Mecole Hardman. sophomore.
Interested.
Tons of speed.
Yeah.
Kind of maybe would be better if Tyreek Hill wasn't also here because he kind of takes up that role. What kind of future do you see for Mecole Hardman?
Mecole Hardman's super interesting to me. Very, very similar to Tyreek Hill. Came out as an absolute burner. Is developing more in terms of route running, in terms of the polish, in terms of contested catches, stuff like that. But he averaged over 20 yards a catch last year. It's insane. Like it's you would tie him to Pat Mahomes, and like I want any piece of this offense not named Sammy Watkins, in my opinion, because Mecole Hardman has that ability where on any given week. Now the challenge is, do you start him that week, which is very tricky. But if he's developing into being the number 2 wide receiver on the team, which I think he takes that step this year, and you have him and Tyreek Hill both on the outside, both with blazing speed and polish, I think that Mecole Hardman has more upside from a consistency possession standpoint this year than what we saw from him last year. I am very interested in Mecole Hardman in terms of what he could develop into this offense. Yeah.
I don't hate that at all. I think he's kind of you don't want him in your starting lineup or anywhere near it, in my opinion, right now. But I'm very willing to stash high on my bench and see what he can become. By the way, just a quick note before we give up on Sammy completely and move on. He is in the last year of his contract, which I think is a single-year contract that they just re-upped. He's 27. There is a chance he goes somewhere else where he's not behind Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Still disinterested.
I mean, for a third.
Okay.
I'll give you a third for Sammy Watkins.
I think that's pretty fair. He has had his chance more than enough to really become what he was supposed to be. He hasn't. He
went from Sean McVay Rams of their gangbuster offense to Patrick Mahomes Chiefs gangbuster offense, and still is not fantasy relevant.
Yeah.
What's it gonna take?
I don't know what it's gonna take. It's gonna take a 3rd round pick, and then I'll be interested.
Yeah,
but I agree.
Sure.
I think a 2nd is too much, but for a 3rd, I would probably slap him on my bench just in case he goes somewhere where he actually gets to be the one and is good. But it's a low probability. It's a
Houston.
Sure. Him and Brandon Cooks back together.
Hey, get the gang back together.
Okay, well, let's talk about the running backs, shall we?
Great way to close out this
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my Lanta. So,
buddy.
We both talked about him being the RB7 for redraft. I talked about him being in competition now with Jonathan Taylor for the Dynasty 101, if you're still doing your rookies, but basically the top rookie pick of this year's draft. Behind him now with Damian Williams out this year is DeAndre Washington, who I'm not concerned about taking much. You know, he'll be what he's always been, which is gets a few catches and probably has a goal line touchdown here or there, but I don't see him being like a full-blown what is Frank Gore? What would you call that? The word is escaping me.
Vulture.
Yes, thank you. Vulture. I don't see him doing that. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has...
What is Frank Gore?
Yes, and you knew exactly what I meant. You hate to see it. Sorry, Frank.
You hate to see it. Oh, man. Gorgeous.
Let's ask this question, okay? Where does Clyde Edwards-Helaire fit in your Dynasty running back ranking?
This is a conversation.
I haven't a full decision yet, but I'm interested to know if you know where he's at for you yet.
I wanted to ask you the same question because Twitter has been going absolutely bonkers since yesterday when Damian Williams opted out. The trades that I'm seeing have been just stupid. I'm seeing conversations where people are saying because of contract talks, they think that he deserves to be higher than Dalvin Cook and Amari or Alvin Kamara.
Oh, my.
I'm seeing stuff like that, and I'm going, just wait. Like, just hold on. The train is off the tracks now, guys. Like, no. Like, where I have him in redraft, I think is the highest I can slot him in Dynasty. I can't put him.
That's still pretty high.
It's very high. It's very, very high. But I can't put him above Dalvin Cook. I can't put him above Alvin Kamara. No way I can put him above Zeke, anything like that. So in Dynasty, I think that he's actually going to be a spot lower. I think he's going to be 8 in Dynasty, maybe even 9. But I'm going to give Derrick Henry the nod over Alvin Kamara because he just got the extension.
I was going to start slapping you with some names. What about Josh Jacobs? Ooh. He's a tough one. PPR, because most Dynasty leagues are PPR.
I know. That's so tough because we haven't seen the receiving at all from Josh Jacobs. And we know that Alvin Kamara can, or we know that, we know Alvin Kamara can catch 81, and we know that CEH can catch 81 if they give him the ball that many times. Oh my gosh. I'm going to take CEH tied to Patrick Mahomes over Josh Jacobs tied to Derek Carr.
I also am going to take CEH. Joe Mixon.
I'm palpating right now. My heart is going absolutely nuts. Oh, Mixon's not even – no. It's CEH for me over Mixon. I'm not a Mixon guy.
It's still Chubb for me. I will say that at the gate. Because I think Hunt's going to be gone. Okay. Then I think we have him probably in a very similar range, which is right around 8 or 9, depending on. Yeah. Probably 9 because you got Derrick Henry there as well.
Miles Sanders.
Wow.
I know.
CEH.
I think so.
I trust the offense so much more than I trust his offense right now.
The thing is, when you're looking at running backs, you got to look at coaches. And with what Andy Reid is saying about CEH being better than Brian Westbrook, when Andy Reid had him in Philly, and when Brian Westbrook put up like 1,700 scrimmage yards, like
that he did.
If he loves CEH, he's going to get CEH the ball. Like I wrote, go to ballblastfootball.com. I put up an article yesterday on CEH right after the Damian Williams news broke, breaking down who he was from a college perspective, outlook. I also linked an article where I actually graded him. I talked about him in this offense, and then in the conclusion, I put a little nugget in there where he has Alvin Kamara-esque upside. Because of what he brings from a catching perspective. If they use him that way, then I probably don't want any Darwin Thompson. I don't want any probably Mecole Hardman at that point, because at that point you're looking at him being the second receiving option.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and then CEH.
Yep.
And if you're looking at him getting 70 to 80 receptions per year on top of the rushing ability and the touchdown upside in that offense, CEH has the door in front of him all of a sudden to be a top 3 to 5 running back in fantasy football.
Yeah. It's tough with CEH because we have not seen anything, and he wasn't quite the top 10 pick where he's a not miss prospect. Right. Like we've seen in the last several years with the McCaffreys and the Gurleys and the Henrys and the Barkleys and the Elliots. Yes, he wasn't there. So if he was drafted there, I would probably have him like in my top 6. I don't
I know,
but he wasn't.
But this is today's NFL. Like I am absolutely in love with Jonathan Taylor, the prospect, from a running back perspective, from what he does on the ground. Yes. I think that he has it in his game to catch the ball. I think that we could see a year 2 or year 3 jump in the receiving game, like what we saw from Zeke. Exactly. Which would put him in the same conversation. But CEH has the door open to him now. That's the thing that makes it very interesting in terms of looking at these two guys. You could be looking at these two running backs both being in the top 6 in 2021. I wouldn't doubt that at all.
Yeah. I buy it. All right. There's one player left to talk about. It is Patrick Mahomes.
We're
done.
See ya.
We're done.
Quarterback one should have been number 1 on the NFL 100.
True.
Super Bowl MVP, former MVP, just got the bag. What's there to say? He's the truth. He's the dude. He's it. I love him.
Question.
Answer.
Lamar Jackson and a 2021 first. Do you give me Mahomes?
No, I'm keeping Pat.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what you need to know about Pat is that not only is he the one, but he's a whole first, more than a whole first ahead of the two.
I agree.
So, yeah. It's Patrick Mahomes, guys. I don't know what to tell you. That's it. That is the AFC West. It only took us an hour and 20 minutes, John. I think this is officially the longest Red Shirt podcast ever. This is what you get, Bets, for leaving.
That's why you should never leave.
If you guys are still listening, listeners, hit us up on Twitter and let us know that this format is way better and you want the 2-hour no bets formats from now on, because
I totally agree with that. Can we just put a poll? Can we just put a poll up?
Yes, I like it.
Okay, let's do that.
Yep.
Bets, if you go onto your iTunes app, is this dropping tomorrow? Is this dropping on
Friday?
Okay, dropping on Friday. Bets, if you go into your app and you look and it says 1 hour and 21 minute, I'm sorry, and I love you.
True. Well, that is it for us. That is it for Bets, who you can find at the Fantasy PT. Even though we didn't say a single word on this podcast, go check them out. Find me at Matt Okada on Twitter. Find John at Dynasty Beard. Any closing words on the AFC West?
Really good for fantasy football.
Indeed. A lot of good pieces here. All right. Until next time, which will also be without Bets. You guys are just hanging with us two for a little while. He's got to do that honeymoon stuff. But until then,
marriage.
We are the Red Shirts.